When we think of wilderness survival, we imagine extreme isolation, harsh weather, and desperate fights for survival against the odds. These films capture that struggle across icy mountains, dense forests, and even the vast ocean. From true stories of human resilience to fictional tales of survival against the elements, this list has it all. So let's dive into the top 15 wilderness survival movies, starting with number 15. Number 15, Arctic. After a plane crash leaves him stranded in the Arctic, a man must use every bit of his resourcefulness to survive extreme cold and dangerous terrain. Arctic is a minimalist survival movie that uses almost no dialogue to capture the intense struggle of surviving in isolation. The Arctic is one of the harshest environments on Earth, and this movie does a good job of showing the difficulty of surviving in extreme conditions. Mads Mikkelsen delivers a great performance as well, and if you're looking for a no-frills, realistic survival story, Arctic is a must-watch. Then coming in at number 14 is The Edge. A billionaire and a photographer crash their airplane in the Alaskan wilderness, where they must fend off wild animals and their own growing distrust of each other. The Edge is a tense survival thriller that shows both the physical and psychological endurance needed to survive in a harsh environment. Anthony Hopkins delivers a great performance as a man whose intelligence and calm demeanor became key to their survival. The Edge's brutal Alaskan setting captures the essence of survival films, where every decision can mean the difference between life and death.
Hey, cop, mate. We got cloud coming up through the valley. It's a lot of it.
Oh, no.
Number 13, Everest. The film chronicles the tragic events of the 1996 Mount Everest disaster, where two expedition groups faced severe weather conditions that led to a fight for survival. Everest covers the physical and emotional struggles climbers face when climbing the world's highest peak. The cinematography in this movie is stunning, bringing a realism that is both awe-inspiring and hard to watch. If you want to see a film that does a good job of letting you experience the dizzying highs, beautiful scenery, and natural terror of the highest place in the world, look no further than Everest.
All you have to do is keep going. Keep going, and going, and going. And going, and going, and going. And going, and going, and going.
Number 12, Jungle. This is the true story of an Israeli adventurer, Yossi Ginsberg, who journeys deep into the Amazon rainforest and finds himself stranded in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. The jungle always seems like an inviting place for explorers, full of adventure and mystery, but once you step inside, it quickly turns into a nightmare. Deadly animals, swarming insects, poisonous plants, starvation, severe weather. It seems like everything is trying to kill you, and Yossi finds this out the hard way, like countless explorers before him. Jungle is man versus nature in its purest form, and is a brutal survival film that pulls no punches. Next up at number 11 is The Gray. After their plane crashes in the remote Alaskan wilderness, a group of oil workers find themselves in a brutal fight against freezing temperatures, hunger, and a pack of ravenous wolves. Survival in The Gray is a battle on two fronts, man versus nature and man versus himself. The harsh wilderness is unforgiving, but the psychological toll is just as deadly. The freezing cold, lack of resources, and looming threat of death push these characters to their absolute limits. The Gray is a film that forces you to ask, when death is inevitable, how would you choose to face it? At number 10 is the classic survival film Jeremiah Johnson. Set in the mid-1800s, Jeremiah Johnson follows a disillusioned soldier who retreats to the Rocky Mountains in order to live off the land. Jeremiah Johnson is a slow-burn survival story about something a lot of us can relate to, and that's the desire to get away from it all and live a quiet life of solitude. Of course, Jeremiah finds it's not so easy living off the land, as he goes from a naive newcomer to a hardened mountain man. The film focuses heavily on the mental and emotional toll of survival, making it a deeply human story about perseverance and the desire to find peace in a harsh world.
The Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, a big black poisonous chicken with no legs.
Number 9, The Way Back. This true story is about a group of prisoners who escape from a brutal Siberian gulag, only to face thousands of miles of freezing mountains, scorching deserts, and dangerous forests. The Way Back is survival storytelling on an epic scale and is about the pure, grueling struggle of man versus nature. The characters face extreme hunger, dehydration, and exhaustion, yet march on, willing themselves to live no matter what. The story's up there with some of the all-time greatest true survival stories ever told, and is a powerful reminder of the deeply human instinct to keep going, even when the odds are stacked against you.
This is Virginia Jean with an SOS call, over.
Number 8, All Is Lost. This is about a lone sailor who is stranded in the Indian Ocean with limited supplies after his boat is severely damaged by a shipping container. All Is Lost is another Robert Redford survival film, and this time relies entirely on his performance, as there is very little dialogue throughout the movie. The film's strength is its simplicity and realism, showing the harsh reality of being stranded on a relentless sea. Every decision he makes is crucial as he faces storms, dehydration, and isolation. All Is Lost captures the core theme of survival films, perseverance against overwhelming odds, and is a must-see for fans of survival stories. Then coming in at number 7 is Alive. It tells the harrowing true story of a rugby team whose plane crashes in the Andes Mountains, leaving them stranded in freezing conditions with no hope of immediate rescue. Alive is one of those survival films that when you see it, it stays with you forever. Few survival films capture the sheer will to live as powerfully as Alive, in which the survivors have some big moral dilemmas to face in deciding how they will stay alive. The story was also remade in 2024 as the film Society of the Snow, which is pretty similar and nearly as good as the original, but Alive is one of the most famous survival films ever made and shows the great lengths people will go to when faced with death.
Been here a lot longer than people know.
2.5 years ago now.
2.5 years ago?
Keep your head down, your mouth shut. That's your best chance of surviving.
Number 6, Rescue Dawn. Based on a true story, Rescue Dawn follows a Vietnam War POW who escapes in the harsh jungles of Laos while evading enemy forces and battling the elements. Rescue Dawn is another movie on this list where escape from captivity is just the beginning of a longer ordeal. The wilderness is oftentimes just as harsh as where you came from, and throw enemy forces into the mix and suddenly you have a truly hostile situation. Rescue Dawn is as powerful an entry as you'll find in the survival genre, and definitely a must-see. Next up at the number 5 spot is 127 Hours. In 2003, a hiker became trapped when a boulder fell on his arm, forcing him into a life or death decision. 127 Hours is one of the more recent true stories on this list, stunning people around the world that a man had enough courage to amputate his own arm in order to survive. The film stars James Franco, who is at the top of his game at this point, even getting nominated for an Academy Award. And you might think a movie about a guy getting stuck under a rock might grow boring after an hour and a half, but 127 Hours does a good job of keeping you hooked by showing the desperation, grit, and perseverance one man needed to stay alive.
2 men set out on an impossible journey. They defied the odds. They defied death.
Number 4, Touching the Void. This is a docudrama about a climber who suffers a catastrophic fall while climbing in the Peruvian Andes. After being left for dead, he attempts a grueling crawl miles back to base camp on a shattered leg. Touching the Void is one of the most intense and powerful documentaries you will ever see. It's a realistic and terrifying depiction of wilderness survival, stripping every ounce of romance out of the story, leaving you with a raw, unflinching account of what it takes to survive when nature shows no mercy. It's a survival film stripped down to its brutal essence, a relentless fight against the odds where hope and despair hang by a thread. Number 2, The Revenant. It follows frontiersman Hugh Glass, who's on a brutal journey of survival and revenge after being attacked by a bear and left for dead by his hunting team. The Revenant is one of the most visually stunning and emotionally intense survival films ever made. Leonardo DiCaprio gives one of the best performances of his career as the desperate and determined Glass. The film's cinematography showed the stark beauty and danger of the wilderness, doing a better job of just about any film making nature itself a central character. The Revenant, like a lot of survival films, is ultimately about resilience and the unbreakable human spirit, and is not only a must-see for survival fans, but fans of movies, period. Number 1, Castaway. A man becomes stranded on a deserted island and must learn to survive by finding food, creating shelter, and battling the elements. Castaway is one of the most iconic wilderness survival films ever made, showing the raw human instinct to survive, adapt, and find meaning in even the most desperate circumstances. His only companion is a volleyball, which he names Wilson, and is a symbol of his fight to hold on to his humanity. Tom Hanks lost over 50 pounds for the role, delivering a powerful performance that captures both the physical toll of survival and the emotional struggle of isolation. Castaway is one of the best survival films ever made and a quintessential entry into the wilderness survival genre. That is my list of the best wilderness survival films. What do you think of the list? Which movies are your favorites, and what other films would you add to the list? Please let me know in the comments below. Once again, that's it for me, everyone. I will see you again soon.